Senator, I want to start with, well, an obvious fact here. This is a reality. You were trending on Twitter this week because of Senator Bob Dole's funeral was this week. You attended, of course. He was a great man, a great conservative. That is not why you were trending, though. You were trending because left-wing blue check marks on Twitter were angry because you were not wearing a mask at this funeral. And they essentially, I mean, these people were hysterical. They were essentially accusing you of murder, of homicide, because you didn't wear a mask to protect others, they said, against COVID-19. How do you respond to this?
Well, you know, it was interesting how the whole thing spun out of control on Twitter and online. I went to Bob Dole's funeral. I didn't know Bob personally. We didn't serve together. He was obviously a national figure. I knew of him, but we didn't know each other personally. But I respected his service, and in particular his heroic service in World War II, where he's, you know, he really embodied the greatest generation, the heroism. He lived his whole life with serious injuries that he suffered in World War II. And we're at a time when the very last of the greatest generation are passing from us, that there are only a handful that are left. And so I wanted to go to honor his life and service and legacy. And I went, and there were a whole bunch of senators that went. But I did not wear a mask. I wasn't the only senator not wearing a mask. Roger Marshall, who's senator from Kansas, is a medical doctor. He didn't wear a mask. Alphonse D'Amato from New York State, former senator, he didn't wear a mask. But most of the senators wore masks. All the Democrats wore masks. Most of the Republicans wore masks. And Twitter went nuts. And the corporate media then threw gasoline on the fire. It culminated in this past Sunday on Jake Tapper's show on CNN. Jake Tapper was interviewing Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota. And Amy and I were sitting next to each other. And she was on Tapper's show, and Tapper, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically said, so you were at Bob Dole's funeral, and Ted Cruz was sitting next to you, and you're a breast cancer survivor, and didn't Ted endanger your life, put your life in danger because he was next to you without a mask? Now, Amy, to her credit, and I will give her credit, she didn't take the bait. She actually took the high road. She didn't take a shot at me. She didn't go, as Jake was begging her to do, and say, you know, yes, Ted endangered my life. But I will say a couple of observations that were particularly ironic. Number one, Jake Tapper asked this question, sitting just a couple of feet from Amy Klobuchar, not wearing a mask. He didn't have a mask on. She didn't have a mask on. They're facing each other. Now, his premise is to be in the room, to be next to Amy Klobuchar without a mask. You are endangering her life. And they're both staring at each other with no mask while making that point. It is the absolute hypocrisy. We were talking about it on January 6th. We're talking about it on CNN. It is political theater and kabuki theater. Let me tell you a second component, which is, how did I get to the funeral? Well, I got to the funeral the way most of the other senators got to the funeral, which is we all loaded up into a bus that met in the Capitol, and we rode in the bus from the Capitol to the funeral. Now, on the bus, you have a whole bunch of current senators, former senators. On the bus, almost every single senator took their mask off.
Right.
So on the bus, we're sitting next to each other. We're all together, Democrats and Republicans, almost to a person. It was, I'd say 80 to 90% of the senators took their masks off on the bus, including most of the Democrats. We're next to each other chatting, and then we step off the bus, and suddenly the masks go on. And it is because there are TV cameras there, and apparently a TV camera, something in the lens makes the virus more dangerous. Mm-hmm. That when you're on a bus and there are no cameras, everything's hunky-dory. But when you're performing for theater, that's what was going on there. And so, look, I think it revealed the utter hypocrisy. And by the way, that hypocrisy continues. If you look at the Senate, when Democratic senators get together in the Capitol today, most of them take their masks off. It's only when the cameras are there they're putting it on. So it showed the masks are an aspect of theater, just like the razor wire and the National Guard with machine guns and no bullets were an element of political theater, and ridiculously, CNN and other folks in the corporate media are enthusiastic participants in the charade.